Hey everybody, I'm just going to do another simple before and after video here. This is my T Bar tank, and I want to shoot some video about my Synodontis petricola, or possibly lucipinus. You can see it down there in the sort of bottom left hand corner. But before I do that, I want to get this tank cleaned up. The glass is all grungy, and the sides and the back are pretty grungy. I'm not too worried about that. I did just recently put a rubber lip pleco in this tank. We can see it here on the front glass. So over time it is going to work on this tank. I'm going to just kind of wait and see how much it gets it cleaned up. I used to have a Chinese algae eater in this tank not too long ago, and it kept the tank marvelously clean. And now that it's gone, I moved it to another tank. I put it over in my native tank so it can do its work over there and get that tank cleaned up. But this tank now needs a little bit of more higher maintenance on my end. I don't have something in there keeping it clean from the inside out. And if you'll look at this glass, the front glass, you can kind of see as I move around all that growth and stuff we've got happening right there. So I'm just going to get in and do a very simple water change. I'm going to wipe the glass down and get the tank looking a little bit nicer and cleaner, so we can then do a little video and talk about that catfish down there in the bottom sort of center left there. So sit tight for a moment, let me get started. This is your before, and this is your after. So the water change made a big difference. Of course, cleaning the glass made a big difference, but I also added the piece of wood down there in the bottom and a few more plants. That piece of wood is actually a piece of wood I had from a long time ago. I collected it myself in one of the local streams or rivers. I don't even remember where I collected that, but I did collect it myself. I think I got that out of Prettyboy Reservoir somewhere. At any rate, I had stopped using it. That had originally been in my brackish tank years ago, and it had gotten that red cyanobacteria all over it. So I'd left this thing outside for about a year, and it had been in my basement for a long time. I'd soaked it in bleach and just all kinds of stuff. This thing had been around forever. And a couple of months ago I decided, it was bone dry. I just wanted to see how long it would take to saturate and sink. And I set up a tank in my shower down here in the basement, and all I used it for was to get a filter cycled in, just so I would have a spare filter if I ever needed one. So I thought, what the hell, I'll just go ahead and throw that piece of wood in there and see how long it takes to sink. And it took a few months, and it got lower and lower in the water, and eventually it sunk to the bottom. And I realized as I was doing the water change that there's no tannins at all in this tank, or none to really speak of. After the water change I did, the water was still very clear. And I happen to like tannins in the tank. I like the tea-stained look to some degree. I don't like it to get too dark, but I like some of it. And I also know that tannins are actually good for the fish. They have antibacterial properties, and I've just read some good stuff about having tannins in your water over the years. So I always like to have some wood in most of my tanks. And now, of course, since I've got that rubber lip in here, I want to have some wood in here in case that needs the wood to chew on. I know some of those smaller rubber lips and smaller Plecostomus and various species, the Ancestris and the Hypancistris, some of them actually need to have wood in their diet. It's the fiber actually helps them digest stuff. So I'm not sure if the rubber lips fall into that category or not, but either way, with the wood in the tank, it's going to be there if it needs it, and of course I like the way it looks. So the wood went in the tank, and I also had these few little pieces of some kind of sword. I think that's some sort of melon sword or something, and that was in the tank originally when it was still my angelfish tank. It was a couple little clumps that sat right up here in the front. And there's the third part of it right there. I kind of buried that one. It used to sit sort of right up here in the front of the tank, and it was all covered in grunge and everything else. But it was doing well for being in an inert substrate. So I saved it, I cleaned it up a little bit, and now we've got it in here, which is a planted substrate. So we'll see how that goes. If it does well, it does well. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't really care either way, but hopefully with the planted substrate, it'll actually grow and look better than it did when this had the inert substrate in it. So there you go. A little more than I intended to do, but that's not unusual for me. I always wind up tinkering with something and getting involved in something that I don't expect to. So make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything I've got coming up. I do want to shoot that video about that synodontis in this tank, and we'll get on that real soon. So don't forget, this one is my T Bar tank. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.